Hello, everybody. It's Donna Cravata, and we are here again with another Real 50 Over 50 interview. And today we have Cheri Andrews. She's a small business and trademark attorney who found a gap. She saw too many small and solo business owners falling through the cracks because they did not have a legal foundation in their businesses. So she did something about it, and I love that. And she created affordable flat rate and subscription packages that are attainable because your small business needs counsel too. And she's also the author of Smooth Sailing, a practical guide to legally protecting your business. And her mission is to make sure that every small business owner is legally protected and running their business the right way so they can grow and thrive and not fall through the cracks. So, welcome, Cheri. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thank you, Donna. I am so happy to be here and I really appreciate the invitation to share my message.
Yeah, what you're doing is very important. I worked for many years in big law firms, and I was writing billing policies and managing financial applications and saw all the bills going in and out, and none of us could afford that. So
You know,
or maybe even understand it with the legalese. So I really want to like learn all about what you're doing and share it. And I'm with you. Everyone needs to have protection in their businesses. So before we dive into that, do you want to just share what happened when you turned 50? Because I'm going to guess maybe there's some correlation.
when I turned 50 actually was a very interesting year. Shortly before my 50th birthday, my husband's business was going through some changes and he became super paranoid that he was going to lose his job. At that point, he was very well paid and we were really enjoying his salary and benefits and whatnot. But it was a very, very stressful period. It was also a time in my life when up to that point, I had been in about the best shape physically that I was my entire adult life. But then through the issues going on with his job and what was going on, he ended up losing his job literally the day before my birthday, I think. Didn't tell me until after I got back from a weekend getaway with friends celebrating my 50th. But then that led to me running through problems with I could no longer keep up with the Zumba class at the gym. Everything I did hurt. I woke up tired and exhausted. I would get in the shower and get out and feel like I needed to go back to bed. And in September, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. So my 50th year was a time of trying to figure out how to get around this diagnosis and this just feeling like my body was broken and betraying me in every way possible. And after a couple of failed trials with some different drugs, I finally said, nope, I am done with that. No more pharmaceuticals. I'm going to figure this out on my own. And I started doing Tai Chi. I started doing regular scheduled massage therapy. I tried almost everything you can imagine, but the Tai Chi, the journaling, the meditation, the massage therapy, those are where I found the introduction into wellness for me. And happy to say now that most of those symptoms are gone, that the pain levels that used to be 7 out of 10 are now 2 and 3. And you know,
Oh,
you can live with that. You
yeah,
can't live with 7 on a daily basis.
no.
So yeah, it was a rough year coming into the 50s. It was also a rough year coming out of the 50s because it was at 59 that I lost my corporate job I had been in for 16 years. We went through a merger. We brought in new management. They changed out the entire executive management team. And here I am just before Christmas. Actually, I was 58, about, going into my 59th year, um, thinking, I have to start over. I have to reinvent myself. And I knew at that time that I wanted to be able to work from home. I wanted to do something that made a difference. I didn't want to go back into the corporate grind. And I had so many, um, I guess, parameters of what I wanted my next career to be, that it came down to what I want doesn't exist out in the real world. I'm looking at job listings and there's nothing that even
Yeah.
remotely interested me. So I figured I had to create the next career for me. And that's where my legal practice came in. I took a look at everything I was capable of doing and where my skill sets were. And I took a look at the world. And that's when, like you said, I found that gap, that
Mm-hmm.
set of those small business owners who just were not getting legal advice and legal protection because they were falling through the cracks, as you said, and um, they either couldn't afford to go talk to an attorney because the 300, 400, $700 an hour is just intimidating,
Yeah.
or
Who knows how many hours it'll
yeah, or they didn't even know they needed to talk to an attorney. And so that's when I decided to start my legal practice. And I'm happy to say now that I feel like I'm legitimately making a difference for small
be. Hmm.
business owners. And that was the goal.
Yeah. And you also were doing like side hustles on the side when you were, when you were working in corporate. So what was some of those, and did they factor into how you created your business?
They definitely did factor in, but let me tell you, so the law paid the bills, and my legal career up to the point at which I started my own legal practice was there as a job. I went to it, I did my work, I paid the bills. It wasn't fulfilling me creatively. That's where all the side hustles came from. The side hustles included things like when my children were young, I did crafting, a lot of crafting. I made dolls, bears, Christmas tree skirts, baby quilts, and I sold them at craft fairs.
Mhm.
We moved on from there to scrapbooking, and oh, I fell in love with scrapbooking. I spent 8 years in the scrapbooking industry. I repped for two different companies, and I ran my own t-shirt design business geared specifically to scrapbookers, and loved that. But then I got to the point where I was away so many weekends for crops and other events that my children, who were then um, I want to say tail end of grade school, maybe going into middle school. One of them actually said to me, "It's like you're not even my mom anymore."
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
like, "Okay, break my heart, kid."
They
Um,
really need us then.
so I let that go and went back to scrapbooking just for myself. But then as they aged into high school and college, my husband and I started doing the whole circuit of going to flea markets and yard sales and estate sales and purchasing antiques and vintage items, and then reselling them or refurbishing, rethinking, remaking, turning them into things they weren't, which
Yeah.
again brought in my creative side. And so for a while we had booths at a couple different antique malls selling
Mhm.
that. So all of those things gave me different aspects, what it was like
Mhm.
to be in an MLM, what it was like to do your own little thing, and what it was like to actually like be renting booth space and doing the whole like super legit side
Mhm.
biz. Um, and I came in with that kind of background of being in the creative world, and I initially thought that that's what I would be doing, would be representing mostly like artists and creatives. It turned out that the people who were drawn to me were more service based. And so that is the bulk of my clientele, but I love them. I love my clients.
Mhm.
Um, and they're all heart centered entrepreneurs who, like me, are really striving to make a difference in the world.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We've got the same people. And so let's talk about how how you boil this down so it's not legalese, so people could actually understand what they're reading, what they're signing, how it works in their business, and then we'll kind of break it down to different types of things that you can do for small businesses.
Okay. So with respect to legalese, I take the position that there's no reason that somebody with a 12th grade education shouldn't be able to read a contract and understand it, which means taking out terms that nobody has any clue what that says and replacing it with plain English. And so none of the contracts that I draft have wherefores and theretos and
There
here
are two floors.
here and afters. And I don't say party or defendant or any, well, that's litigation. I don't say that ever. But I don't refer to people as parties. I actually, in a contract, will put in the names of each side of the contract and use that throughout, as opposed to giving them some generic term. I remember back in the old days when it was party of the first part and party of the second part, and your brain's just going, wait a minute, what? And
Who am I again?
as an attorney, I couldn't follow it. So I'm trying to make it really simple so that no matter whether it's a contract, a policy, a employee manual, any of those kind of things, that anybody with a high school education can read it and understand it.
That's good. And like aside from the obvious contracts, agreements, trademarks, disputes, things like that, like what do small businesses overlook with what they need to protect their businesses?
So a lot of it is policies and it's internal operating things. It's knowing that you've got a privacy policy on your website so you're compliant with GDPR. It's knowing that you have that opt-out provision and a address at the bottom of every email that goes out so that you're compliant with the CAN-SPAM Act for those newsletters and that kind of thing. So it's small things. But those things add up over time and then it starts feeling heavy and it starts feeling like a lot. And so for me, the idea is if you get with a business attorney that you can have an ongoing relationship with, we can keep adding those things to your legal assets and your arsenal as we find out, oh, we're missing this, oh, we're missing that. And you know, that's why I love the subscription program that I have, the business council membership, because that allows me to do things like go and review websites and make sure that everything's on there and you've got your copyright legend and you've got disclaimers if you're in specific fields that need those. So it's all, sometimes it feels like very little things, but it's all things that add up to your total legal coverage.
Yeah. And as like, you know, we're all in this hyper creation mode. So like as we're creating these things, just being mindful that as we're adding new things to the mix, that they're falling under the umbrella of the legal protection. Like, you know, if you have everything set up properly on your website and then you start doing landing pages on another platform, you need to have all of those things on those landing pages too.
Correct. Yep. And it's interesting because even with when you're talking, so when you start talking about landing pages, if you set up a learning management system, so you decide to have online classes, now you've got another portal where you need your terms of use and you need your disclaimers. And I see a lot of small business owners going that route with the online classes and they don't realize, okay, now we've got one more place, like you said, that we need these assets. Another thing that I see small business owners doing a lot that they're not paying attention to is the collaborations. And they're entering collaborations without contracts. It's just, oh, hey, you know, we're going to do this thing together. Except that, you know, while you love each other and while you're feeling good about this thing you want to do together, is the time to iron out, okay, who's responsible for what? And if we make money on this thing, how are we splitting the profits and how are we covering expenses until we start bringing in money? And all of that should be worked out at the beginning stages. And there should be a written agreement
Yeah.
because I see too many small business owners who are entering these collaborations without the protection in place.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, somebody who was pretty well known reached out to me and wanted to collaborate with me and wanted to do it without a contract. Like I'll go do a webinar with somebody and, no contract needed. But like if we're going to get down to taking money for something, we need a contract. I mean, just to figure out like where does the money come in? Like, does it come into your side? Does it come into my side? How do we deal with taxes? I started asking all these questions and she, in her mind, she just wanted to take my content and put it in her learning system. And I was like, yeah, no, that's my IP. You can't do that.
Right.
And
And even if you were going to allow it, then you want to allow it with some
with
solid
stipulations,
licensing restrictions and how it can be used and how
yeah.
far it can go and what your students can do with it. And,
Hmm.
on it goes.
Yeah. I mean, she said, oh, I have an agreement for that. And she sent me this thing that was clearly an agreement for something totally different. And I said, I don't think this is going to work. Because it was just, I mean, that whole scenario was like 3 weeks of back and forth, and it was very stressful. I was like, yeah, this isn't worth it.
Yeah.
And now, what about affiliate programs?
Another area where you need an agreement.
Yeah.
Okay. So, if you're going to offer an affiliate program where other people are bringing people into your membership, your learning management system, your coaching, whatever it might be, and you say, okay, well, I'm going to give you 25% of whatever the take is. Well, then the agreement needs to cover how much are you charging? What percentage do they get? What do they have to do to get that percentage? How are you going to track it? When are you going to pay? How are the payments
Hmm.
going to be made? So
Hmm.
there again, there's another contract. And what happens if there's a dispute? And
Hmm.
what states' laws are going to apply to that dispute? So it's another area where, again, I see a lack of contractual coverage.
Hmm. That's a great term. And so now it sounds like you're offering more than just legal advice. It sounds like you're a business counsel also.
Well, that's exactly what I call it. I call it the Business Council membership. That's my monthly program for people within the two states where I'm licensed, which is Maryland and Pennsylvania. But I call it that because there's so much more to it than just drafting
Mhm.
contracts or reviewing contracts. It's actually getting down to the nitty gritty of how you're running your business and what we can do to improve things. We
Mhm.
talk about mindset. I help people name their programs. I mean, there's some creative input behind it and definitely a little bit of business coaching
Mhm.
going in there.
Yeah. I find, and I'm curious if you feel the same thing, when you start to dig into a business, um, people have all of these things, but they don't connect the dots between them. Like there are all of these little silos that they've created, and nothing kind of goes together. And then when you start putting these things together, that's when it's apparent what's missing.
Well, and that's when you start making the business make sense,
Hmm.
when you can connect those things and how they work in sync with each other. Then the business makes sense. Then the messaging becomes clearer. And,
Hmm.
I'm not a brand strategist or anything like that, but I do understand the need to have a clear message if you
Hmm.
want to bring in your ideal clients and the audience you're hoping to serve.
Hmm.
And if you've got all these disparate things going on and you can't bring them together so that people understand what you're doing, all you end up doing is confusing them, and a confused customer doesn't buy.
They leave and they never come back.
Right.
Oh, this is so good. Um, so now also, like, um, what are your thoughts on visibility in regards to legal advice and, having a safe business?
Visibility is a big one for me because it was a hurdle I had to overcome myself.
Mm.
I grew up in a world where being invisible was the key to survival. And the
Mhm,
less you were seen and heard, the safer you were.
mhm.
So I didn't realize it really until I started this business that I carried that message through my entire adult life and most of my career of always being in the background, doing the work, but keeping my head down, not touting my successes, not getting noticed. And it really doesn't help you build a career, honestly. But when you get to the point of being an entrepreneur, you cannot succeed if you're not willing to be visible. So I had to myself dig through a few of it's okay to be seen, it's okay to be out in the world. You're offering a valuable service. People need it, they want it, but they're not going to know about it if they don't hear about it.
Yeah,
So, but when I say that, I also say that with the caveat of let's get visible, but let's do it safely.
yeah.
And doing it safely includes some of the simple things like that email or that physical address that has to go at the bottom of every email went to be compliant with the Can Spam Act doesn't have to be and probably shouldn't be your home address if you're working from home. I rent a PO box. That's what I tell my clients. It's any address that can accept physical mail.
Mhm.
So it
Yep.
can't be a virtual address, but it can be a PO box. It can be one of those UPS store things. So you do that to protect yourself. When you're looking at your branding and you want to use a name, you want to do it in a way, again, that's going to protect you. So you want to make sure, number one, you're not infringing somebody else's brand that's already out there. And number two, you want to look at trademark protection so that nobody else can then imitate and steal your brand. So those are the kinds of things that we look at in terms of being safe.
Mhm. And, what about images too, like using stock images or pulling things off of Google? And I mean, like, when I work with clients, I tell them, "Just go out and take pictures of everything."
So the order of what works best, first off, is pictures you took yourself because you own the copyright to those, no questions asked.
Yep.
Second is images that you actually pay for.
Yes.
So you join one of the stock photo companies and you purchase a plan, and then you pay for the images you need. I use deposit photos, and I get my credits for them through AppSumo, so I pay
No.
very little. I love them, and I use a lot of that in social media posts and in newsletters. Um, the one thing I would advise nobody ever to do is just go take something off the internet because somebody else owns the rights to that image and you're taking bread out of their um, you know off their table if you're stealing their images and not giving them the credit for it.
Yeah.
So not only do you not want to do it, but it can get you in legal hot water and you could end up being sued and it can end up costing you a lot of money. So you just don't want to go down that road. Even with stock image companies, you want to make sure that you're purchasing the rights that cover the uses you want to do.
There's different levels.
So you've got to make sure that it's not a personal use only image, that
Mhm,
it's a commercial use
mhm.
image, and
Yeah.
that the license allows you. For instance, the image that's on the cover of my book was a stock photo that I purchased the rights to, and it gives me the rights to something like 50,000 imprints. Well, and I always said, hey, if I sell more than 50,000 books, I am happy to go back and give that person some more money
More money,
for
yeah.
that image.
Yeah, and it's like my brother is a photographer, and he was traveling, and he was sitting at an outdoor restaurant, and he saw a bus go by with one of his images on there,
Ooh, ouch.
and he got about 30 or $40,000 for that.
Well, good for him.
Yeah,
I'm glad he stood up for his
yeah,
rights and, didn't just
um,
let it go.
yeah, but he takes this was, he photographs, movement, so he does a lot of ballet work, and, this was from a ballet company that he's worked with for years, and some other ballet company just, like, took the image off their website and put it on a bus.
Not smart.
No,
That's
but I've also heard stories of people being sued from like an image they put in some like, a blog post 5 years ago, and it wasn't done right. One of the things, I'd love your advice on this too. One of the things that I tell people when they use stock imagery is not to change the name of the file. So, like, the deposit photo files come with the deposit photo, like, a URL, and then the descriptor number of whatever the file is, and if you change the file, you don't know which image it was, you can't, like, easily trace it back.
I would agree with you on that one, as long as wherever you're putting it will allow you to keep that
Mhm,
deposit photos file name. Some of them want shorter file names, and the deposit photo ones we know get kind of long.
mhm,
But if you have that file name, it's very easy to go back and find where you downloaded it, when you downloaded it,
mhm,
where you were in your subscription phase, whatever, to prove that you
yeah,
actually purchased the rights to the image.
yeah.
But if you've named it something else, ballet dancer on bus, now you don't remember where you found it or how you sourced it. And I actually went through this recently with a client, and she sent me the photo that was the problem, and I was able to go in and with a few keywords find it on deposit photos for her, be like, okay, here's the image, and
Mhm,
then she was able to go back into her stuff and find it. But because she, exactly what you said, she had renamed it and didn't
yeah,
know where she
yeah,
had gotten it.
yeah. Any other advice? We got a few minutes left. Like, share away. This is so important.
um, So when I look at businesses as a whole, there's three areas where we get our protection. You first is your business entity, and I advise all my clients to set up an LLC to provide the legal protection for their personal assets so that their home, their bank accounts, their 401ks are not going to be
Mhm,
at risk for their business. The second is your contracts, and we've talked about that quite a bit. Um, and making sure that you have that agreement between you and whoever you're working with, so that if there is a dispute, you know where to go back to and where the terms are. And the third thing is insurance, which is not legal, but
mhm,
that's your third pillar of where your protection comes from.
yeah.
So those are the three things that I really think every small business owner wants to make sure they have in place, to know that they are protected. And what insurance you need varies business to business. Talk to your insurance broker, but it's another important piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, and also overlooked,
Yep.
because, we're all looking to do the fun part of this.
Well, and it's true that people want to get into whatever it is they actually signed up to do. And I found that a lot of small business owners, they're willing to pay for website design. They're willing to pay for graphics. They're willing to pay for all the fun, creative part of setting up their business. But they're a lot more hesitant when it comes to these other pieces, the legal, the insurance, the financial bits. And sorry, but it's the legal, insurance, and financial bits that are the ones that are going to make you lose your business, or
Yeah.
get you into legal hot water, possibly even land you in jail if you don't pay attention to those pieces.
Oh, on that note on that note, you are all gonna wanna reach out to Cheri Andrews to make sure that you don't end up in jail.
We
One
don't want
question
anybody rocking orange jumpsuits here.
one question about your packages and your membership and your flat rate services. Um, are those only applicable in the 2 states that where you're, licensed?
That's
Or
a great question, Donna. So here's the quick answer. If it's day-to-day business stuff like contracts and policies, it's pretty much just the two states where I am licensed, which is Pennsylvania and Maryland. If it is anything that's based on federal law, so your copyrights, your trademarks, your privacy policy, because actually that's pretty much based on international law,
Yeah. Yeah.
those I can help anybody with because I'm not tied to the 2 states I'm licensed in for anything that's covered under federal law. And the third thing is, even for the people that I can't help directly because they're not in Pennsylvania or Maryland, I have the Wise Owl Academy, which is my online learning platform where I teach a lot of the stuff that I do one-to-one for my personal clients. I have this learning platform called the Wise Owl Academy where people in other states can get access to videos, instructions, templates, checklists, and a monthly live masterclass where we
Oh,
go over different
that's
issues.
great. So even if they had to hire an attorney in their state, they can go to an attorney and have something reviewed instead of something created, right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. That makes a big difference. That's the difference between 1 hour and who knows how many hours.
Uh, that's when you can actually go to an attorney and say, I already have this thing drafted. Um, it's done. I just want you to review it and make sure that there's nothing specific to our state missing from it. I don't want you to rework it. I don't care if it doesn't look like the way you draft contracts. It was an attorney drafted contract and I'm good with it. I just need this particular information answered. And then, yeah, you're talking about a 1 hour review as
Exactly.
opposed to a 4 or 6 or 10-hour draft from
Yeah,
scratch.
yeah, and the draft from scratch also requires phone calls and emails, and each one of those things go tick, tick, tick on the clock in 6-minute increments for some reason.
Yeah, I hate billable hours. Minutes. Ugh.
I still will never track my time. And every time I've worked with a coach, they're like, "You have to track your time." I'm like, "Nope, never happening. Lifetime quota met."
Well, yeah, that's exactly why I set up my business the way I did, besides knowing that small business owners need transparency and they need to know what they're getting and what they're paying for it.
Mhm.
But it was also so that I knew what would be coming in and I knew what I was charging things for things. And so I didn't have to track every 6 minutes of my life. I was able to say to somebody, you want me to set up your LLC? Great. Here's how much it costs. And then it takes me however much time it takes me.
Mhm. And you've systematized it. You've created I'm sure you have. You've
Yes.
created, like an onboarding system and, moving from one stage to the next. So, there's not a lot of surprises there.
There isn't, though. The only thing that tends to throw me off is when the name they give me isn't available because either
Mm.
it's not available in the state or it's already trademarked, and then we're
Yeah.
back to the drawing board.
There's actually an AI tool that searches all of that. Like, it goes to all the places and searches. I'll find it and I'll send it to you. That would save a lot of time.
Yeah, that's the one drawback that I run into with setting up LLCs is just sometimes they give me names that I can't get by the
Yeah.
state. Yeah.
Well, this has been really incredible and so useful. And if there's anything that you want me to include on your spotlight page to make it more of a resource page, please feel free to send it to me and I'll add it there. Um, if anybody has any questions or comments of listening on the replay, please tag Cheri because she is a wealth of information and we all need her. And I like to wrap these up with asking for a wisdom bomb, something small and actionable, or maybe big and actionable, or important and actionable, but just something to leave people with.
Um, so I didn't really think about this one ahead of time, but what I think I'm going to give you is for any of your listeners out there who are small business owners who have not yet heard of the Corporate Transparency Act. This is federal legislation that went into effect this year. It requires most small business owners to file a beneficial owner information report with the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. And the deadline for getting that done is the end of this year. If you were in existence before the beginning of this year, if you set up this year, you had 90 days, and
Mhm.
hopefully whoever was setting you up told you about it. Um, but if you don't do it, there are substantial financial fines up to $10,000
Wow.
and potential prison time up to 2 years in jail.
Wow.
So I don't want anybody I know or anybody I'm in any way connected with ending up running afoul of this new legislation. So if you haven't heard about it, please reach out to your business attorney and find out about it and get your BOI report filed.
Wow.
And the beautiful thing about it is the filing is actually fairly simple. It only takes about 15 minutes and it's free. But
Mhm.
we need to make sure all the small business owners are getting that done.
Is there something that you can send me about that, and I'll put it on your page and share it around?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. All right. That would be great. Thank you. Woo.
Just trying to keep everybody out of trouble. That's my goal, getting everybody legally protected and compliant.
I'm telling you, this entrepreneurial thing, it's like being in a video game sometimes.
Keeps us
Things coming
busy.
from every direction. That's why you're so needed. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for what you do, because I am sure you have saved one more than one little scrappy butt out there.
I like to think so. Yeah. Keeping those small businesses up and running and out of legal hot water.
That's great. And keep doing what you're doing, Cheri. And thank you for sharing all of this today. And, if you're listening, please share this with other small business owners, because this is all important information. And and let's keep on keeping on, keep the small businesses going. Thank you again, and we will be back next week with more.